Well, I think for everybody it's a gradually unfolding understanding. But for me the best words are that it's about structured, shareable information. And you can use it for almost anything. And it goes on being used right through the life of the project and through the life of the building after it's complete. And I think that opens up an awful lot of possibilities that just didn't exist in pre-digital working. Well, the way I look at it, I'm not a techie person, but I can see how tech has transformed our industries. So I tend to act as a bridge between the lay understanding and the technologists. I'm in partnership with people who do understand it, but essentially we work on the basis of how does this affect the client in the way they commission, how they brief people, who they appoint, how the whole process works. So in a way, I'm not using the technology, but I'm using the potential of the technology. There's still a lot of argument about the return on investment in using BIM, and I'm sure it will become clearer once we're all running and we're using it as a regular thing. But for example, there are some clients who are asking for everything in the way of asset information. They haven't the slightest idea what they do with it. They're causing a great deal of cost and effort, and it's probably not something they're actually going to make any use of. But they did ask for it. The government said we should, and it's a waste of space, you know. So it's getting it right, knowing what's useful to you involves thinking at the front end rather more than you used to do, instead of discovering it as you go along. You don't have to teach the client how to use BIM. I mean, that's one of the good things that separates the American approach, where they say, yes, the client needs to know how they would use BIM, from the British approach, which says, no, leave that to the team, just ask the client what they need it for, you know, what they need to know, and you then figure out how it will produce that. So that's really a cardinal difference. What is it about the business that the client is in that is fed by information? How does the client make decisions? What information do they need at each decision point to make those decisions? Some of which will be from the model, some of which will not. But they all have to be brought together, otherwise it all grinds to a halt. You don't get the speed result that you would do if you understood those things. So famously, the Ministry of Justice is supposed to have had a workshop to try and figure out how it makes decisions in relation to projects. They ended up covering a 40-foot stretch of wall with a flow chart showing all the internal workings of the department which needed to all be in a line if they were going to make a decision related to the project. They never had previously done that, so they'd always gone back on their decisions, you know, and that's the normal thing that happens in projects. Clients make a decision, but then they row back on it, or they don't make a decision because they haven't got their ducks in a row internally. Either way, that's where the huge amounts of time waste and reversal come in. And BIM isn't actually doing anything other than shining a light on decision making and say, what do you need to know, when you need to know it, here it is, right now you can make your decision. You need advice, and you need to figure out how to build your team. Are you going to appoint the people to help you right at the beginning, and then let them build the job round themselves, and then finally get formally appointed? Or are you going to have advice and then choose a team in competition and then hand over to them? And that's the big alternatives, really. You either start with the people you're going to use right through, but you don't have competition, or you have advice and then a selection process. Well, interestingly, I think it's what comes just after BIM Level 2, which is the Internet of Things. And that's advancing very much more rapidly than BIM did. And it will give us, for the first time, not only the ability to have self-running buildings, it's much easier than a self-driving car, by the way, so it could come sooner, but also feedback on what works. Instead of not knowing and not actually delivering what you were asked to deliver, and never knowing that you haven't, feedback will be enormous, and you'll be able to learn. I think all the professions will learn quite soon how to reach what it is they were asked to do, and whether they did reach it, and how to repeat that when they have to do it again. So this whole idea of professions not delivering anything other than their best endeavours, I think we're moving to a point where we want you to deliver results. It works on both sides of the equation. It will make things faster and cheaper, but it will also make them better. So they'll be more valuable, but less costly. And it should be possible to work on both sides of that equation, to streamline, cut out time, which is where cost is, cut out material waste, at the same time produce a superior product which is actually going to last longer. The leverage between design thinking at the front and outcomes over the life cycle of the building is thousands to one. And unfortunately we make bad decisions when somebody is just thinking very, very short term. I have to get this project finished for the lowest possible sum, never mind what it costs to live in, never mind whether it really works, I won't be here. I'll have collected my bonus, you know?
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing which leads the industry not being trusted, not being a satisfactory place. You don't get what you pay for. Well, the thing that's interesting me in particular is not so much a technology as a technology-enabled change, and that's towards more collaborative working. At the moment, Level 2 BIM doesn't require you to have different styles of contract or different forms of insurance, and that's because otherwise we'd never have started. But the next stage will require that. We'll all be sharing too much to have our individual contributions picked out and said, that was your fault. We're going to have to be much more collective. And I think this is going to change. I mean, one of my jobs is I'm chairman of the Joint Contracts Tribunal, so we're looking at the next generation of contracts. But we are going to have changed arrangements for the whole team to enable the team to sink or swim together, and for the client to be protected not by having to find fault, but by having probably insurance to make sure that they do get what they've said they will get. And I think that's going to change everything, because at the moment a lot of people in the industry think, I can only succeed if you fail. It's nonsense. Win-win is perfectly possible, and other industries operate on the basis that you can all make money. Price of cars keeps coming down year on year, but the product gets better. You know, why doesn't it happen with building? It does not happen at all. Shipbuilding is one, you know, ships are almost always one-offs, although there may be series. Aircraft is another. Almost no two airliners are the same. They're built to order, but around obviously a single concept. And I think the move towards off-site construction is going to make it seem a lot more similar. You know, we're going to build for how design for how the factory will make it, rather than think in terms of site trades, which we're running out of people to do anyway. Well, what I did was to explore, first of all, list the basic advantages of BIM to clients, and then what clients need to do to change their game in order to make the most of it. We have some case studies of 4 very different types of clients, at least one of whom is in your program for the conference. And then we go through the project phase by phase, step by step, following the RIB plan of work. What does the client do? What should they expect to get? And this is all on the assumption that the client is going to actively play the role to exploit the potential. But there are plenty of clients who are passive, and I devise those terms really. A passive client is one who says, you say BIM's great, go ahead and use BIM. Just leave me out of it. I don't understand any of it. And there's plenty of buildings that have come out quite satisfactorily on that basis, where the client is simply saying, use BIM if you want to. But the active client is actually going to get a hell of a lot more out of it. But they do have to make an effort, they do have to invest in getting their systems in a row. If you're a regular client who's going to own and run your buildings, that's the top type of client who would make the effort first. You know, a university, a health authority, education body of any kind, where you're going to own and keep the building, and you know therefore what you want it to do long term, what your outcomes need to be. This is one of the reasons why the public sector is where it started. But if you're a developer who retains and manages, it's the same story. You will have a life cycle interest that is now much easier to deal with than it used to be. Well, I suppose you've got a mixture of people who are still trying to find their feet, looking to get confident. And the more case studies they hear of people like themselves who have actually broken through and are delivering a higher quality of service for lower cost, that will be tremendously encouraging for them. At the same time, I think because the field is evolving so rapidly, the leading edge is really interesting, really stimulating. Things that just a few people are now doing but will become available to everyone. That's very exciting as well. So I think you want that mixture of finding your feet and also keep going ahead, seeing where it's going. Because it's not going to end, you know, we're not going to finish. It's just continuously going to change.